So one thing you should know right off the bat, my name's Jennifer McMillan. We're here today to talk about our lovely teenagers and how we can survive this time at home with them, and also how do we support them through this really unique time. So I am recording this. So I'm hoping at some point we can have a little time where you can ask questions and share, because all of you have experienced some wins in this. And so it's really an awesome opportunity for us to share with each other the things that are really working for our teenagers right now. But I also need you to be really aware that this is recording. So those of you that are going to watch this later, you might want to just fast forward a couple of minutes, because we're going to talk about Zoom for a minute. Okay. So if you're anything like me, like I have yet to have hosted a 40-person Zoom meeting. So this is all like exciting new stuff. But given that it's exciting and new, some nutso stuff could happen. So I want to try to keep that from happening. So one of the things that I want us to do is for sure mute. And because I don't want you to, have your kid run in and scream something, and then you're like, I'm on, I'm being recorded. Like, we don't want any of that. And I don't know how to edit. So I'm just trying to protect all of us in that way. So there also is this little hand raising that you can do if you have a question. And I also have the chat on to the side, so I can see if you have a question, like a direct question, please feel free to ask me in that way. Okay. So we're going to get going. And if you've seen me before, you know that I talk really quickly. So if I'm talking and I get going about something and you're like, whoa, slow your roll, lady. Like, I didn't hear what you said. Please type to me, pump the brakes, or give me one of these. Like, just tell me what you need from me. Okay. Awesome. So I really have been so looking forward to this. I miss people. So being able to think that there are 15 of us right now in this group, really focused on the same topic, is really exciting to me. So if I seem a little jazzed, that's because I'm just thrilled to have so many people in my virtual space right now. So let's just get going. So before, I just want to qualify that I'm not techie. So if something goes awry, it's because I'm absolutely new at this. So I am going to try to share my PowerPoint with you. So this is all new. We'll see how it goes. Okay. So let's talk about teens in particular. But before we go there, I want us to know that this is all new for everyone. There's no expert around any of this because it's all new territory. So my hope is that we're very gentle with ourselves as we talk about this. This change in our life was thrown on us, and when those things happen, when we have to make a really quick pivot in life, our brain does something really incredibly helpful for us. It floods us with loads of neurotransmitters to support that first crisis. And that's why we tend to be able to keep going for a while. But by now, we're probably puttering a little bit. Things are starting to be real. Like, we're waist deep in this now. We know that that this is our new norm, and we don't know how long this is going to be what's expected from us. So it makes a lot of sense that it might feel a bit more overwhelming now than before, even though we've been doing it a while. And I can just speak for myself. My emotions are all over the place on any given day. And I can imagine that adolescents have much of the same, but much more intensified. So remembering one of the critical changes during adolescence is this intensity of emotion that happens. So it might not seem like a big deal to you, but to them, it's an incredibly big deal, and it's real, right? So we need to keep that in mind and be gentle with ourselves as we go through this, and gentle with each other, okay? So the first thing I think is really important to talk about is that during adolescence, there is this incredible push for autonomy, right? This whole idea that I'm not a little kid anymore, you know, back off me. Like, I can manage myself. Like, a lot of that is necessary and normal during adolescence. And we hear that all the time, right? I mean, I don't know if you live the same reality I do, but on any given moment, they might ask me for help. And then 2 minutes later, there's like, Mom, stop. Like, particularly when they ask me for help with schoolwork, right? So I'll get in there and I'll start trying to help them. And then it's like, Mom, back off. This isn't your assignment, right? Like, so there is this come towards me. And then there's this push away, right? That's their drive for autonomy. So during this time, it's really important to maximize on that need for independence. So really consider allowing them to manage themselves, allow them to participate in family activities like meal prep and taking over some things. This is an awesome time to practice what does it really mean to be an adult and have some independence. So I know it's tricky because all of this online learning is so new. And so many of them do need our support around how to set up a schedule, how to get going, motivation, all of that. But if you can, think about those opportunities for you to be more coach than manager. It works. It's like a twofer. It works as a twofer because you are speaking to their need for autonomy. So instead of saying, today you need to do your math and Spanish homework, you would say to them, what's your plan today? Tell me what you're going to do today, right? And some of them will be like, I don't know, right? And some of them you'll have to help along the way. So I have 3 kids. All 3 kids require a different participation as manager. So one of my kids I sit down with on the daily and we write out a visual calendar of what's going to happen. It's really, she does that now, but I sit with her and she goes through and she organizes in that way, right? One of my other kids, when I offered to do that, in fact, I sat down with him and I wrote it all out with his help. He took it, crumpled it up and chucked it. It's like, I got this, Mom. I mean, everybody needs a different level of managing. But my thought is, why not really use this push for autonomy during this time? Let them stumble around a little bit. This is a time where they can make mistakes and figure it out. This is a gentle time to do that. Not that we throw our hands up and say, okay, you're in charge of all of your online learning. My kid that crumpled up his little schedule that we made together and chucked it, I don't manage him the same way, but I do say to him every day, what's your plan? What are you working on today? And he tells me. And so today I sat with him and he showed me all of the things that he turned in. So, and quite frankly, there is an opportunity to celebrate all the work that he did and for me to be like, wow, dude, you really rocked this out, right? Like, to give kudos for really being efficient and taking care of yourself, and looking at it, you can feel good about all the things that you turned in and you got done. So it just requires a different tweaking for each of your kiddos. The other thing is, this is a time to really think about not using your controlling voice, okay? So one of the things about the unknown is it often encourages us to swim to the way that we've learned to swim during anxiety-provoking moments. So I'll give you an example. lots of folks, when overwhelm happens or uncertainty happens, they become over functioners. Like they're those folks that make a list of 100 things all day that they're going to do. Because if they over function, they don't have to feel, right? I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going, right? And then some folks completely underfunction in the face of anxiety. It's just like so overwhelming. Like I can't get out of my pajamas. I haven't brushed my teeth in 3 days. Like I can't even think about doing my homework, right? A lot of that really is rooted in our first family. Like with our nuclear family, how was it set up that we responded to anxiety? And often, which is, I mean, this is interesting to me. I'm a family therapist, and if this lines with what you're interested in, sometimes it really speaks to birth order, which is just fascinating to me, right? Lots of oldest. What do you think they are? Over functioners. Let's do this, people. Like they're the list makers. The underfunctioners tend to be the babies. They're just like, I don't know. Tell me what to do, right? It's not always that way, but it's interesting and fascinating to see how that sometimes lines up. So thinking through this whole idea of how to help in a way that's useful for them. So trying not to be a manager, trying to be a coach. Okay. Whoop. Hold on one sec. Let's see if this works. Yep. Okay. Whoops. I think I went 2. Social connection. Of course, this is a huge part of adolescence that's now been kind of stripped from them. So the normal way of gaining social attunement by going to school, hanging out with their friends, seeing if they're okay by what their peers are doing, all of that normalizing, processing their emotion, all of that is shifted because they can't hang out with their friends anymore. And this is where I hear a lot from kids when I say, when I ask them the question, what do you miss the most? Almost 100% of the time, it's my friends. I miss hanging out with my friends, right? So that makes a lot of sense. I miss hanging out with my friends, right? So I can only imagine during this developmental stage that really is so reliant on peer relationships that this is really critically difficult for them. So the way we support them with social connection is really allowing them to use whatever method they have to keep connecting with those friends. So this would be those times that we might have to loosen up our screen policy, because the way they connect right now is through a screen. And I know it's hard. If you're like me, like the idea of encouraging that, but I know right now peers are their anchor. So it's desperately important for them to have access to them. So to be able to allow them to stay connected with their friends on the Xbox, to be able to, FaceTime with their friends, to do a Zoom group with their friends, whatever they're doing is really important. And teens are creative. I've heard a lot of kids doing a lot of interesting creative things with each other, trying to follow that rule of 6 feet social distancing. They're just so, this need for connection is just so innately driven. So we need to find ways to support that. Okay. So to acknowledge their feelings and to be empathetic. So this time right now is incredibly hard. I mean, it just is. Who would have predicted that this is where we'd be right now? So to be able to allow all feelings to be welcomed into their lives, to be able to not try to be so quick to try to solve whatever feeling they're having in the moment. So feelings are not wrong. They're not wrong. They just show up for a reason. And to validate that, yeah, this is hard, and not try to rush them through it. Sometimes the way we rush them through it is to try to compare our suffering to others. So they might be like, I can't believe I'm missing prom. I bought this awesome dress. Like, I can't believe this is happening. And often we want to be quick to be like, hey, nobody in our family is sick right now, but you need to see beyond yourself. Like, we often want to stretch them out of their feeling, but it's really important during this time to just let them have their feelings. Don't be quick to try to talk them out of it. Just validate it. I mean, I know that when somebody tries to push me through something really hard, I resist it. I almost make it bigger. Like, you don't understand. You're not listening to me. I want to hold on to it desperately when somebody just doesn't allow me to have it. It's okay to be really sad right now. I can't imagine that kids aren't, I mean, I am. I can't imagine that there aren't feelings of sadness and anger and loneliness. All of that stuff is absolutely part of this deal. So to be able to say to them, okay, whatever feeling is here is okay. But really it starts with, how are you doing? How's it going right now for you? This is really hard for me. How is it for you? And what they'll probably say is, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine, Mom. I'm fine. Right? And what we know is fine is code. It is code for there's a lot going on under the hood. So sometimes I make deals with kids around the word fine. If you want to tell me fine, I'm going to require you to give me, am I here, or here? It just kind of gives me a little bit of information about how you're doing. And if they won't share with you, just providing opportunities for them to share with you, right? We don't stop asking because they won't answer, right? It's okay to ask. And it's just the asking that means something, right? So don't stop asking just because they say fine. There is a tendency to want to do that. They won't tell me anyway. Well, they might not, but they might. You never know when they're going to crack. Like, that's the other thing. They're totally unpredictable. Like, you might think like they're not going to say anything, and the next thing you know, they're crying in their cereal, like sharing all this stuff. Like, you just, the ask is what's important. The other thing that's really important is to have an empathetic stance. This goes back to this idea that during this developmental stage, feelings are intensified. They're highlighted and bolded, not because it's a choice, because it's part of what's happening inside of them. Good, thanks. I asked my husband to stop in and come running in if I needed some tech assist. So up to this point, I feel okay. But so really, it is about just listening with your whole self. So trying to ask them and really listen to their intensified emotion, even though inside you might be like, oh, geez, like, I wish I wouldn't have asked. Like, this seems a bit ridiculous. But keep all that to yourself. Like, really just lean in and listen. Being a good empathetic listener sometimes is all they need to help support them. Okay, but sometimes the emotional storms start coming. So I wanted us to talk about those things that can really anchor teens during times of unsettling things. Not only teens, all of us, but in particular can really help them. And sometimes these are things that they resist a bit. So one of the hands down best things that you can do for your kids right now in this moment is help them set up some sort of routine and schedule, particularly during the school week. Our mind and our body requires a certain rhythm, a flow, a routine. And what that does when we establish that, it allows our nervous system to settle. When we have a predictable rhythm, then we don't have to be spinning and overwhelmed about what's happening next. I don't even know. I have 6 pages of Spanish and this and this. Like, setting a schedule keeps us anchored in the present. It keeps us from spinning into future focus. I can't do it. I don't know what to do, all of that, which is really not helpful, right? So encouraging them to stick to some sort of routine. Now, this is a tricky one. I've been talking to loads of teens that tell me they're staying up until like 3, 4 in the morning. And I'm like, what the beans? Are you kidding me? Like, how do you even do that? And what are you doing? Like, well, then I sleep till, 2 in the afternoon. What? Like, well, of course you're overwhelmed then. Your brain gets outside for 3 hours and then the sun's going down. Like, that's just not helpful in the long run. So that might be something that's okay on the weekends, but during the week, I'd really encourage you to think about establishing a sleep schedule. So likely you had one before all of this happened. You probably were, at least in some sort of like, okay, phone's off by 11, or you're done with homework by midnight, or whatever. You probably had that conversation. And if you didn't, I'd really encourage you to think about doing that, because if we want to support the emotional well-being of our kids, they need adequate sleep. Just getting enough sleep can take you from a complete emotional breakdown to being able to keep going. Sleep is highly important. So sitting down and really talking to them about, what time are you really going to bed these days, right? They might not tell you, they may not be honest with you, but one of the things that's really tends to cut that whole thing short is when you take electronics away from them at a certain time, right? What are they? Are they paging through magazines at 3? I don't think so. They're not looking at 17 magazines like I did when I was in high school. Like, there's nothing to do if you're not on some sort of device, so you're probably going to go to sleep, right? So really be thoughtful about. The other thing is really trying to shift their focus on what they can control. So right now there's so much grief around the things that they can't control. Like maybe, prom got taken away. Maybe they played baseball and their season is gone now. Like all these things that they can't control. They, want to go hang out with their friends, but they can't. Shift that focus to the things that they can control. And really what that looks like is more things like, well, what are you going to do today? Like, what do you have on your docket today? And really thinking about if we are going to go future focused, and maybe you have a kiddo who is graduating this year. And so all of those fantastic plans that they had now are going to need to be postponed. So you talk about it more in terms of postponement. Yeah, maybe now we're going to do it in July, but think about what could we do in July that we couldn't have done in June? It's going to be nicer out. Like, still plan for those things, right? Those are things that you can do. The things that we can't control right now really aren't worth spending a lot of time on, right? The other thing is movement and exercise. So I'm not talking, you don't have to run 5 miles a day if you're a teenager, but creating some sort of pattern of movement, especially if it means going outside, right? There's something really fantastic for our brain around our day-night cycles when we get outside during the day. So even if it's taking the dog for a walk, that's good stuff. I mean, finding a way to encourage them to move is very important. Think about how you feel if all you've done all day is sit in front of a screen. Like, you don't feel good. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. Maybe somebody's like, I feel fantastic. I don't know. But most people need to get their circulation going. And what we know about stressful times is that if we're experiencing big amounts of stress, our body will try to support us by creating more stress hormones. It will generate more stress hormones, which means we'll have more cortisol and adrenaline flooding through us. If we just sit with that, that's when our body starts speaking to us. That's when we start getting chronic headaches or stomach aches. Movement is necessary for so many of your systems to work things out. So I would strongly encourage some sort of routine around movement. the last thing I want you to consider is this. So with all this online learning, yeah, there's still going to be academics. Don't get me wrong. But right now, learning can really focus on those non-cognitive skills. Those non-cognitive skills are things like self-reflection, empathy, communication, those things that require us to kind of pause and be thoughtful. Those are non-cognitive skills that are mandatory for success in life. If we don't learn how to manage ourselves and to regulate ourselves and work through big emotions, we can have all the academic skills in the world, but if we can't learn and adapt and create coping strategies, it's really not useful. We need to focus on those non-cognitive skills. The other thing, I don't know about you, but I live in a house of 3 adolescents, okay? So I've taken this time to really think about the things that I want them to learn from me. So we have learned how to check the oil in the car, right? We've talked about how to book a ticket online. What does your insurance number look like? All those things that we never have time doing. They've learned how to make Swedish meatballs, my grandma's recipe. Like all those things that we always say we don't have any time to do. This is the time, right? So take this time and think about what are the areas that we can continue to grow on that might not be academic. What are their stress plans? Being able to ask them, how are you managing your stress in this? What are you doing? Because if you're one of those folks that when we become really anxious and stressed, we become under-functioners, boy, if you go away to college and the waves get big and you suddenly are like, dude, I can't do anything. I've been sitting in my pajamas for 3 days because I can't wrap my head around these finals coming. You want to talk to them about what are your stress management skills right now? What are you doing? I know for me, I go, I do this, like share with them. Really have them spend some time thinking about it. Okay, so embrace technology. I mean, that's where we're at right now. I don't know about you, but I am somebody who absolutely, I mean, it feels like a real deficit to me. I don't have a lot of language around technology. So, and when I learn something, it's like the coolest thing ever. And people look at me like I'm nuts, but I'm like, wow! Like when my husband was showing me some of this Zoom stuff, I was like, this is so cool, right? Like, really embrace it. What I know about online learning right now is that we're all learning on the fly, right? Teachers are doing the best they can to figure this stuff out really quickly. So are your kids, right? So we have to embrace it and we have to be gentle with ourselves around it, right? So if you're like me, being on screens all the time just feels absolutely counterintuitive. Like, I'm like, what are we doing? We need to be living real life. Like we need real interaction, right? But for right now, technology is really where it's at. So we have to embrace it. On the other hand, we also have to make sure that we take breaks from screens. When you're on a screen too long, so many things start shutting down. So encourage your teenagers to take breaks. So one of the things that we've been practicing at my house, one of my kids in particular, has a really difficult time getting off of screens. The type of person that you can be like, okay, 5 minutes, and they're not even in the same universe as you. Like they can't even hear you, right? One of the things we've been practicing is getting yourself off of technology, taking yourself off, because 4 years, hopefully this kid will be, away from me, and I'm not going to be there tapping on their shoulder saying, dude, you've been playing this for 3 hours. Like, I need my kids to figure out how to get off screens on their own, right? When you're bored, instead of just immediately going to screens, think about something else, right? So I took a picture of my F-bomb chore jar because it was created because of technology. So in my house, that'll tell you something. that I had to create an F-bomb chore jar about the reality I'm living in. And mostly this F-bomb chore jar is been used by me. So let's just be honest. Because technology is difficult. The learning curve right now is, straight up. So to figure out ways to be gentle with yourselves and also encourage this idea of taking a break is really important right now. Okay, everybody's family is different. But one of the things that is remarkably true about this time is that this has forced a pause in lives. And what that has created is this opportunity for us to really cultivate our relationships with each other. So I don't know about you, but I have not spent as much time with my teenagers consistently as I've had in the last month. I mean, it's remarkable. Like, I've learned things about them that I'm like, what? Like, I've heard ideas and feelings and thoughts and so many things about their life that time just didn't afford. We were always so busy. So thinking about how do we create time during this pause that we're going to remember. So what's super cool about memory is that it likes to hold on to feeling-based memories. So often, instead of facts, we might remember big facts, but we do remember feelings. So think about this question for yourself. Like, if I said to you, what was your favorite year in school? What was your favorite year? You'd probably come up with something, and quite likely it would be your favorite year because of feelings that are attached to that year. So during this time, when we look back on this time, it's going to be wrapped in feelings, right? And so think about, how can I contribute to this time around what they remember about our family? What is the feeling that I hope they take with them? Now listen, being in close proximity of each other for weeks on end, there's going to be loads and loads of time that we hope we forget, right? I mean, those snappy moments, those moments that you're like, if you don't get away from me, I feel like I'm going to smack you across the face, right? Like, we've been together a lot. So there's going to be plenty of that, but let's hope there's also plenty of moments of laughter and connection and being together. And sometimes teens will resist this. They'll be like, no, they won't want to come out of their room. But I think it's important to say things like, it won't be the same without you. We need you to join our card game. Like, we've got to do this. Like, I need you on my team. Like, to continually try to fold them in, even if they're resistant, right? Even if it means that you set up a routine that you all walk the dog after dinner together around the block. Whatever it is, like, try to create those gleaming moments that they'll remember and you'll remember. One of the greatest things that has happened for me, besides the fact that I've gotten to spend so much time with them and really hear what's going on in their lives right now, is all of these really funny things. You know, I have had my teenage sons doing these Beachbody workout videos with me, and never in my life have I laughed so hard. I mean, they're hurling insults at poor Kat, the modifier. Like, why is she being, why doesn't she do this? Like, it's so hilarious. Teenagers are instinctively hilarious. So like, doing fun things with them, like asking them to do things, is really, really an opportunity to create memories together. Everybody's family is different. Everybody has a different version of this. Just try to find what your version is. Help someone else. So I know we're in a time where that seems like we can't do that. Like, what do you mean help somebody else? Even if it's community service in your own family. It doesn't mean that you have to do community service out in the world. You can do that, but helping someone else, research suggests that helping others is a bigger indicator of happiness than self-care. When we're able to see beyond ourselves, it puts life in perspective without people giving us verbally the rundown about how we, need to see wide. We experience it wide. So often teenagers are accused of not being able to see the forest through their tree, right? They can't tend to sometimes see beyond themselves, right? This is an opportunity to practice that. Whatever that might look like in your family. It might be helping a younger sibling with Khan Academy. It might be mowing your neighbor's grass. Helping somebody else really encourages this idea that the world is bigger than us, right? That we need to see beyond ourselves. Teenagers in particular don't tend to love it when we say that to them. Like, can't you see beyond yourself? Like they don't tend to take to that very, very well, but encouraging them to help other people is something that we can do that will help their own emotional well-being. It feels good when you do something beyond yourself. Okay, so this question is actually for you, because we can want to help our kids desperately, but often that real helping requires us to be taking care of ourselves. So somebody posed this question to me the other day and I was like, ooh, that's such a good question. What is your current refuge? Like, what are you doing to survive this time? What are those things that are making this time manageable for you? For some folks, it might be making those lists that help keep them going. For other people, it might be going for a 5-mile run every day. Everybody has something different that helps them keep going. By identifying what it is that's helping you, you're able to be more gentle with yourself. I've talked to lots of people that are like, I'm eating too much. Like, I'm baking all the time and I've been making pastries and this and that. That's okay. Like, this is not a time to be harsh and critical of yourself. Now is the time to be very gentle, compassionate, and loving with yourself. So your teens may be struggling. That doesn't mean that it's your job to erase the struggle. Your job might be to just have an understanding that it's okay that struggle is happening, that life keeps going, right? To have those moments where we allow all feelings to be present. Now, I'm talking about general feelings. If it feels like your kiddo is really, really struggling, then of course I would encourage you to reach out for support, right? That's what we do always when our kids are struggling with, very serious, it seems like longer than typical moments of sadness. We reach out and we get more support. But it would be absolutely typical and normal right now for your kid to be experiencing some grief, some sadness, overwhelm, irritation. All of that is absolutely okay. The only way we're going to be able to be there for them is if we first show up for ourselves. And that's why it's important to have your own refuge. What does that look like? What are those moments that you can't wait and look forward to every day? I've taken to go into my car, turning on the heat, getting all toasty, and making phone calls to people that I want to talk to in my tiny little car, all neat and tidy. It's all warm. I have my favorite drink. Like, that's my refuge right now, right? I mean, that we all have to have it. Find what's yours and understand it's not selfish. It's part of what keeps us going. Okay, so this last picture, I actually took this last night. I keep complaining about how the sun isn't shining. And I feel like for myself, my own ability to tolerate some of this has a lot to do with if the sun is shining. Something about if it's nice out, I feel like, oh, I got this. Like, this is going to be okay. And then As soon as it starts raining, it's just like, no, this isn't going to be okay. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, a lot of it has to do with the weather for me. And so I was complaining all day yesterday. I was grumpy. I was prickly. I was just having a terrible day. And my oldest said, Mom, let's go for a drive. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I'm super grumpy or whatever. And he's like, that's fine, whatever. So we started driving, and look what happened. The sun came out. Like, I felt like it was just for me. It was like, yes. But the reason I put this on here is because we have to look for those little shiny moments. Like, we can story this whole time up as difficult and horrible and, you know, all of that. We can, and we have lots of evidence to support it. And all those feelings are real and not wrong. But there are also moments when the sun breaks through, right? Those moments when our teens will talk to us, or those times when they actually will play cards with us, or those times when they might even ask you your opinion. Like, those times, those breakthrough moment times, I'd tell you to embrace them, look for them, be on the lookout for it. So it might seem few and far in between, but when we start paying attention and actually looking for them, they're probably there more often than you think. So that's really all I prepared for my little portion of this. Now I'd like to turn it over to folks that might have a particular question or have something that they would like to share about what's been working in their life. Does anybody have anything? Any questions? Any particular topic that you want to talk about? Yes. Okay. So can you unmute yourself? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Oh, there you go. Yay.
Hi. It's really, I guess, well, a comment and an observation. One is that I'm so grateful to my child's teaching team at Discovery. The way they've rolled out the curriculum, they've had 1 week of, you know, maybe a topic emphasis on mental health, a week where they were kind of exploring what this virus is and the implications of the, you know, the public health aspect, to give them context, you know. And then this week, one of the assignments was to measure biodiversity by getting out and documenting as many different species of birds, you know, as you could find. I have a 9th grader, and also just the connection that he's had to the teachers. It's just been fabulous. It's given him some structure, and he's just really been enjoying the coursework and that connection. So huge kudos to these teachers who I know are working harder than ever to learn and adapt and all of that. So I'm hugely appreciative, and so far so good. The other one, the observation I had was to just share that 2 nights ago, our family sat down and watched PBS's Frontline on the pandemic. And that documentary, I think for the first time gave my child this perspective, like to see the streets of Seattle shut down. His perspective has been out our windows, beautiful view, you know, the natural beauty we have here in our community, our trail walks. It's just, but this sort of just gave him this like perspective of that PBS Frontline just gave him this more global perspective, but the program also focused on Washington State in a way that just kind of made it more like, whoa, like he's been to Seattle, you know, he walked down those streets and whoa, that's a big, huge city. And they would like talk to Microsoft's CEO, and just getting that, it's not just his district that shut down, but these huge corporations. Anyway, I think that that also helped in terms of like a perspective that it had them. So for whatever that's worth, I'm sure it's available for streaming too, because it is such a unique situation. But knock on wood, these things have all been helping for sure. And I really appreciate your talk. All of the subjects you touched on are really relevant and helpful. So thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing. That's a great resource. Was the documentary at all scary? Like, would it intensify anxiety for a kiddo?
We did not find it scary. It was very factual. You know, it sort of focused on how patient one in the United States came into a hospital in Everett, Washington.
Mm.
And they talked to the doctors about how they were ready. They had been preparing for this just weeks before. They'd had like a pandemic simulation. I found it really interesting. Like, it was just very factual, and my son was just glued to the program. You know, it was really interesting. Frontline is kind of an engaging, you know, documentary format anyway.
Yeah.
Everybody could be different.
Yeah.
But we found it really helpful for him to kind of get that outside of the community view a little bit, and also way less stressful than just turning on your average news.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like CNN or you know, whatever you watch, those types of news programs I find tend to be a lot more stressful.
Yes.
White House briefings or whatever. This seemed to me to be just a lot more neutral, and also it was really up to date. This was 2 nights ago, and they incorporated footage, I think up through the 14th or 15th.
Wow.
Reviews, and so it was really current.
Awesome.
Worth having a look at, potentially.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing. That was awesome.
Thank you. I'll mute myself again.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything that seems to be working for them? Or, yes, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, so my question is this. As you said, I have 3 different teenagers with 3 different necessities and 3 different characters, completely, I mean, opposite. And for example, the 17-year-old, she is almost, I don't know, for me, it's a baby. For me, she's a little girl, but she feels like I'm almost an adult mom, so let me be. Yes. But like you said, I feel like she needs a little bit more structure. She needs a little bit going out and exercise, because being at home, I mean, she used to be very active. Now she's kind of like nothing. So my question to you is, how much do I push if she's 17? Yeah. I think it's so different from my 14-year-old that I can just tell him, go now, and he may bark, but he will do it eventually.
So I think it's a great question. It's like, how much do you let her make her own decisions, and how much do you push? And, you know, I mean, I think a lot of it depends on the way that you approach the subject, right? So like, if you tell her what to do, she's likely gonna push back with that, no, I'm an adult, back off me. Right? If you come more alongside and say, you know, what are those things that you're doing that are helping right now? Like, and she's going to tell you, or she might tell you to buzz off, but you might then be able to say, you know, I noticed that when you were, you know, running, or when you were walking the dog all the time, it seems like, and I know for myself, when I get outside, I feel better. Right? So like, you're not telling her what to do. You're just encouraging her. Right? Or to ask her, how does she feel about it? Does she feel like right now she's doing everything she needs to do for her wellness, like for her brain, her mind, and her body? Like, is she doing the things that are necessary to make her feel her best in the current situation? You know, often I will ask the question, you know, what are you doing for yourself right now to make yourself happy? Like, where's your joy? And if they say they don't have much, I'll say, well, what are the things in the past that have really, you know, helped you? And often that's when they discover their own, well, I did feel better when I was, you know, running, or I did feel better when I was, you know, going for bike rides or hikes or whatever. Like, they come to their own conclusion, and that's exactly what you want. You don't want to be feeding it to her. She won't like that. You know, because she is 17, she has her own opinions. So, I don't know. It's a tricky one. It depends. I do know that it doesn't tend to work to come hardball on kiddos that are 17. You know, it just seems they dig in more, and then it becomes really conflictual, and then, you know, it doesn't tend to work to your advantage, right? I don't know. I would certainly try to bring it up in some way, but I wouldn't go full court press on her. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody else have a particular topic you want to talk about or something that's really working really well? Yeah, go for it.
I especially with more and more talk about opening things back up again. My daughter keeps revisiting the idea of, can I go see my friends? I promise we'll stay 6 feet away from each other.
Yeah.
And, you know, so far we've not had any gray area with her because she'll just keep running into that wall. And, I just, you know, I've been just saying, look, the stakes are too big and, you know, we want to trust you, but it's too important. And her friends are doing it though. And it's just so hard. And I mean, I guess I kind of hope that the school district would take more of a guidance, but I guess they can't. I mean, there was just like one sentence in an email, like, we've heard that people are getting together, and it's so tough. And so, we're really struggling with that.
I don't think you're alone in your struggle. I do think that it's a parenting decision. It's a family decision, and how you are trying to have her see that it's helping her community, right? The stakes are too high, because it's not as much about if she were to become sick, it's more about her passing it then to somebody else, right? That might not be able to. So I do think you're smart to know that when we open the gates, they tend to bust through them. Okay. So it's the same thing with anything. That's why it's so hard to close gates, right? Like the flood of screens or whatever it is. So to be really thoughtful about when you feel like as a family, it's okay for her to do that. You know, I always say to my own kids, I'm taking my direction from the state, right? Like if you're, you know, I'm taking my direction from people that know way more things about this, are smarter than me about this, right? I just keep saying we take our direction from the state, and I'll do whatever I can to help you stay connected to your friends without you, you know, hanging out with them. You know, a couple of days ago, we took one of my high schoolers, we drove around like 12 brownies to friends, and he'd run it up, he'd jump back in the car, roll down the window, beep the horn, text them, left you something, they'd come out, it'd be like, ah! They saw each other. There was you know, sometimes that's all we got right now, right? Like, I'll do whatever I need to do to support you with keeping connected with your friends. But right now, you know, the state says we're not getting together, right? I mean, I know it's hard. It's not easy. You're not in it alone. Anybody who's hanging out with a teenager all the time is experiencing the same exact thing. Please, mom, let me go. Please, mom, right? That's just part of it.
And she'll try and like corner one of us at a time and talk about it. And I'm like, nope, this is a family meeting discussion.
Right.
So then I have, you know, at least one other person I know that's gonna back me up.
Don't get cornered alone with her. Like, she sounds smart. Like, keep on tag teaming, because it seems like that's useful.
She has an agenda. She will go for it.
She'll go for it. Nice. Okay. Wish it was an easier answer, but it's just not. Anybody else have anything that feels important to say has been really helpful, or a question or a topic that seems like it'd be worth chatting with other people about? No? Yes?
I do.
Okay. Hi.
Hi. I have 2 5th graders who aren't getting very many assignments from school.
Yeah.
And so we end up with lots of time on our hands.
Yeah.
And I've tried to do game day time games with them, but it always ends up that they want to go back into video games.
Sure.
That's what they want.
Yes.
And I'm having a really hard time not allowing them to have that.
Right.
Because that's always been a family rule that there's no video games during the week.
Yep.
That's only during, excuse you, during the weekends. Weekend is their video game Fortnite time.
Yep.
And their brain is all hooked onto, it's like, because during spring break, we gave them time to play.
Yes.
And now it's back to school.
Yes.
And it's just like, I can't have video games? What are you talking about? All my friends has it. Nobody else is implementing this rule.
Yes.
And you're like the meanest mom ever.
Yeah. Well, you're not mean alone. That's the same rule in my house. So I think that, I mean, it is challenging. And I think that part of the current culture of parenting in particular is that when they have nothing to do, it's our responsibility to find them something to do. And I think that is absolutely false. So if you think about your own childhood, I mean, I think about mine, my mom would have laughed in my face if I would have asked her to entertain me when there was nothing to do. She would have been like, okay, you're bored, go ahead and scrub that toilet in there. Like, that's what I'm going to need you to do. Right? Like, there would have never been this expectation that mom would entertain me. And I think we know, and you probably have read some of this, and I certainly have, this new movement around boredom, you know, brilliance and boredom. And this idea that in the last decade, we haven't allowed anyone to be bored. We're always connected and entertained. And when we are bored, what tends to happen is we start tapping back into our creativity. You know, if you're bored enough, I was just talking to somebody not too long ago who is a teenager who busted out a big old bin of Legos and created this incredible thing. Never would have busted out those Legos if his mom would have let him have access to his Xbox. Never, right? Like, sometimes when we're forced to do things, we build forts and we, you know, bake cookies or Swedish meatballs or whatever it is, right? Like, being able to allow them to be bored without carrying this guilt that it's your job to entertain them, right? And to be comfortable with whatever decision you make about video games. I mean, it's okay to not do what everybody else does or to do what everybody else does. I mean, I think it goes back to that idea that we all are having to be a little more flexible and gentle with ourselves and the things that we've set in motion in the past, because this time is unique and you know, we weren't prepared for it. So be gentle with yourself and really think it through. Like, I would encourage you not to make like a hair trigger decision, like, okay, Xbox every day, you're driving these wheels. Like, really be thoughtful about it and make a decision, and then just be like, okay, I'm okay with that. You know, whatever the decision is.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say or share? No? Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. One last one. Oh, you got to unmute yourself.
Hi.
There you go.
Just another comment. I saw a meme that I thought was beautiful, and I shared it with my son, and it said, I'm not stuck at home, I'm safe at home. Mm-hmm. And I think that, especially for adolescents, if they can sort of have more of an understanding, it's a great opportunity to teach them a little bit about epidemiology, right? Why testing matters, contact tracing, the whole, you know, everything going around to why we are in our homes. You know, why are we at home? And then also for adolescents, maybe, hopefully it's not as anxiety inducing to understand, you know, that it's a serious disease, obviously, because we're home, but then taking it that step further and we're safe at home. Mm-hmm. Like, that has been really, that whole idea of perspective is everything, kind of helps lengthen the fuse a little bit, like, and also foster that sense of gratitude that we can be safe at home.
Yes.
So for the other parent that's struggling with that, you know, with the teens missing each other, sometimes I have felt like that's kind of an important thing. We've also been watching a lot, movies like carving out family time around. We've actually never seen all the Harry Potter movies. I cannot believe it. So we're watching those and just finding ways to feel comfortable and safe at home. So I think that perspective is not only important for kids, but for adults too.
Yes.
So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you for all of your thoughts. So
thank you.
Well, you bet. So it's 5 o'clock. So I definitely wanted to keep us to a, on time. One of the things that would be really useful for me from those of you that participated is for you to let me know if this was useful. Like I can certainly roll these out once a month if it seems useful, but I also don't want to bombard people either. I miss people, and I know in community, I feel better. And when thinking about, okay, what can I do to try to create some community, this is really our only option right now. So if you feel comfortable doing so, please write me an email and let me know. If you don't, no problem. It's totally fine. It just lets me know if there's an interest, or if nope, one and done is good. Or if it's like, no, more would be better. So thank you so much for participating. And I hope that we all just keep on going and be nice to yourself in the journey. Okay? Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.